So ה'תשכ תש"כ והמשך to the מאמר and learning. Podoh בשלום nafshi. So my soul was redeemed in peace. Mikravli, from the battle that surrounded me. Kibrabim hoyimodi, for the many were with me. Right? Alter was saying this. This kapitel, when he was informed that he was to be released, exonerated. The Gemara says in Brachas, Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu says the Eibishter Kol Oisek B'Torah Gemilas Chasadim U'Mispalel Matzibur. All who involve themselves in Torah, Gemilas Chasadim, and daven with the Tzibur. Ma'elini Olav Kil B'To'ani Liu L'Bani M'Beinu M'Soilam. I consider as if He redeemed me and my children from amongst the nations of the world. So how is this into in the pasuk? Kepirish Rashi. This is the Gemara's commentary on this pasuk. How do you get from the pasuk Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas, or Torah, Gemilas Chasadim, and Tefillah? So Kepirish Rashi, that Podoh B'Shalom Zeh She'osak B'Divrei Shalom. He redeemed in peace. So this is the one who involved himself in words of peace. The Hainu Torah. Torah Divrei Shalom. Tichsiv, as the pasuk says in Mishlei, all her pathways are peace. So that's where Torah is hinted in the word Shalom. And obviously, Gemilas Chasadim is peace. When you give, you do tzedakah and chesed, so you're promoting peace. And obviously, Tefillah, it's in brackets because that's the most obvious in the pasuk. For the many were with me. That is, that's obviously davening with the minyan, with the tzibur. So therefore the result is Podoh B'Shalom P'diyas V'Yeshuas B'nei Yisrael. So we're speaking here about the P'diyah, the redemption, the salvation of Eden, the Yeshuas B'nei Yisrael, Yeshuas HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Eden bound up with the Eibishter means that it's his salvation. L'Hashem HaYeshua. There's two titles, L'Hashem HaYeshua. L'Hashem HaYeshua, unto God is salvation. So he's the source of it. So please grant it to us. And then L'Hashem HaYeshua. It's a salvation for the Eibishter. This was said, if I'm not mistaken, by the Mittler, the Alter Rebbe's son, the first Yutas Kislev. To who has to really celebrate? L'Hashem HaYeshua. That Chassidus was exonerated and his Torah was, Pnimis HaTorah was redeemed. At any rate, so the redemption of Yidden is the redemption of the Eibishter. That's what the Gemara says. Pedani li ulabonai. You have redeemed me and my children. The Marsha, B'chidush HaGodes, Moishe the Marsha, Rabbi Shlomo Ideres, a classic commentary in the Gemara. When you learn Gemara, Rashi Tosfos, the next step is Marsha. So he has two pirushim. He has a pirush on the Gemara, on the halachas, and he has what he calls Chidush HaGodes, where he explains the Agoda, Chalokim of the Gemara. Moishe Beer, there he adds an explanation. As you look in the back of the Gemara, you'll see, well, it's a different, it's a smaller typeset. So the Marsha says and adds, Shehein Hein, what we're referring to here, these are the three pillars of the world. Which you learned in B'Keyovis. The world stands on three things. Now, Torah and Gemilas Chasadim don't have to be explained, but Avodah. He talks about Tefillah. Avodah basically means Karbonis. The answer is, of course, they're one thing. Avodah means Karbonis in the Beis HaMikdash. The Akshav Hashem Beis HaMikdash Kayim, now there's the Beis HaMikdash, Atfilah Shel Tzibur, Ibemokim Avodas HaTzibur Shem HaTmidim. So davening with the Tzibur is in place of the communal Avodah, which is the Tmidim, the daily offerings that were brought every morning and every evening, and also in Shabbos and Yom Tov, the extra Karbonis and so on. Karbonis Tzibur. They are called the Karbonis of the many, of the community. So that's the pshat in the Gemara. Now, you have to understand what's the condition? It has to be dafke davening with the community, with the minyan. Taka true. that from the words of the pasuk, for the many were with me. Mashma, the inference is that the diak is the daven with the tzibur, but haguf. Avlein and movements are understood. My shaychas in apdia. What does it have to do with affecting the redemption? Shapdia ein ela de tfilistam, that the pasuk is saying, the Gemara is saying, and the pasuk, that the redemption is not affected through ordinary tefillah. Ela de tefillah matzibur dafke, it's got to be dafke b'tzibur. The lechori would appear that mitzvah sat tefillah, that mitzvah to daven, as the pasuk says, over the second parsha of the Shema b'chol levavchem, you shall serve God with all your heart. Ask the Gemara, how do you serve with the heart? You can serve with your hands, you can serve with your feet. What does it mean to serve with the heart? Ask the Shehi belev, what is the service of the heart? I say, zu tefillah. Davening is how you serve with your heart. So this is, I'll call yochid v'yochid. This is an obligation that is addressed to every individual. When you daven with a minyan, or if a person, the Gemara says, doesn't live in a place or he can't get to the minyan, so you should see to it to daven at the time when the tzibur is davening. So what's the point of that? The Gemara says, when the tzibur davens, it's an auspicious and desirable time. So then, as a miskabelis yoiser, you understand that then the tefillah is received even more so, more favorably. But that's in terms of making it more miskabelis. But the actual commandment of davening, just like terig mitzchasodim, which she a mitzvah yochid to daven, to learn terig mitzchasodim applies to addresses the individual. It's not an inyan of learning barabim. There's inyan stam also mitzchasodim, collective participating in a collective endeavor, but that's secondary. It's an individual obligation. So the conclusion of that question is, what's the reason? Why does the pasuk say that it's dafke barabim hoyemodi, the dafke tefillah b'tzibur, not individual tefillah? Okay, question is clear. Yeah, base. Yeah, we're following. You're good. That's the tzemach tzedek. Tzemach tzedek's beer on Tilim, on the pasuk. So what does he add there? What does it say in 4? Yeah, he makes the point that it's obvious that when he gives Gemilas Chasodim, you're promoting peace. That's how it's hinted in the pasuk. V'yesh lahaktim tchila hayedua. There's more there because it's an obvious point. Rashi doesn't have to say it even. So he says, see them, there's more than just that observation. When they just give a footnote, it's a footnote. It's a source. And they say, see, means you'll see there, you'll see there's more than we're saying here. And it says, ayin, that means not just see, but delve into. And that will lead you to a whole other dimension, which we're not going into the body here of the Maimon. So so first you have to preface to answer this question, that which is known. The 3 pillars correspond to the 3 others. Avram, of course, was Gemilas Chasodim, hospitality. About Yitzchak, we don't find almost anything said in his entire life, very little. The one thing the Torah does tell us is that he redug the wells that his father had dug, which the Plishtim had blocked. He digs them, and now they remain. So showing in halom, what's the meaning of digging a well? Showing in halom, milamata lamayil, he's bringing the water up from below to above. That's the avodah of tefillah, he's going to say. Like someone who digs for a well of what, spring of water, he brings the water up. That's the point here. That's tefillah. Tefillah is man addressing God. So it's the water rising up. This is the main avodah. We find another thing about it. Yitzchak went to talk in the field. That's when he encounters Rivka. And Rashi explains there, what does it mean? So he's talking in the field. Who's he talking to? He's davening mincha. So his avodah is the avodah of tefillah. And furthermore, so a third indication. What's Yitzchak? Hashem told him, Rashi brings this, that he should not, there was a famine. So when there's a famine by Avraham, we read last week, he went down to Mitzrayim. Yitzchak is told, don't. Because Rashi explains, he's an Oila Tmima, he's considered a perfect offering, completely consumed on the Mizbeach. He was ready to do that and be that and remains thereafter. That defines him. So that's Korban. That's why he shouldn't go back. The Korban Oila, first of all, the Korban Oila, B'chlal is not eaten altogether, but Korbanos can only be eaten in Yerushalayim at best. That's the low level of Korbanos. The higher Korbanos have to be eaten within the precincts of the Beis HaMikdash. So too, Yitzchak, you're an Oila Tmimah, you can't leave the Holy Land. At any rate, so we see his whole inyan Shazel, inyan Avid, it's a Korbanos, his whole inyan is Korbanos. His whole Metzias is Oila Tmimah. Which you recall, it's a big theme of Rosh Hashanah, is to remember that. To remember the pile of ashes that he would have been, was ready to be, that always stands before God, pleading on behalf of Klal Yisrael. This is davening. Davening is man offering himself to Hashem. So that's Yitzchak, the three inyanim, that all point to tefillah. Yaakov and Yaakov is Torah. Yaakov made us be Yaakov. He established testimonies by Yaakov. V'Soira, Son be Sol, and he established Torah for Yisrael. So talking about Yidden B'chlal, but what name of Yidden are we speaking here? Yaakov and Yisrael, and Eidos, which is part of Torah, and Torah is all associated with Yaakov. It's interesting. That's not elsewhere in Chassidus. It brings the Ishtam Yeshev Yeholim that he sat in the tents of Shem Ve'ever. Doesn't bring that pasuk here. So it comes out of the three pillars. That's the three ovis. And ein kodin ovis ela l'shleisha. Even though they had their children, they were also founders of Klal Yisrael. But the Gemara says, in terms of fathers, so fathers are only the first three. So this explains why. And then it's also, I think, even Alpinigla, yeah. It's because what happens to the forefathers is a signpost. Ma'asav is similar bonim. Not true of the Shvatim. What the individual Shvatim experienced is not a template for Klal Yisrael. Masha'inke, all of their lives are, that's Pashat Apiniglan. Apichsiditz is because the midas and their avodah were in yonim klolim, general avodas, which we just defined, Torah avodah and Gemilas Chasadim, and that's the avodah of every year thereafter. Whereas the individual additional paths in the service of Hashem, that's tribal and don't belong to every Jew. Yehuda has his avodah, and Reuven his, Shimon his, and so on. Although amongst them, Yehuda is Inyan Klali, which is why we call Yehudim, but he's the exception. Which is why the kings come from here. At any rate, now comes the Nakuda, which the Maimon is going to expand. Omer Razal. So the Medrash says, that the Ovis, they are the Merkava. The Merkava means the chariot, which the Nevi'im, Keskel and Yeshaya saw when the heavens opened, the chariot, borne aloft by the angels, upon which sat the supernal man, the Adam Elyon, previous Maimah, Adam Kadman. So what's in the Merkava? And Altab explains in Tanya, Shekol Ivarim Kulam, all of their limbs, all of them, Leinas and Merkava were a vehicle, only Rak L'Rotzen Ha'elyon Levadai Kol Yemeya. They were exclusively devoted to the divine will all of their lives. Rabbi adds, again, they're the Ovis. So their avodah is bequeathed to us. So likewise has to be the avodah of every Yid. Shekol in Yonah Vasi Yosef. What's demanded of him, and therefore what's possible, is that all of his aspects and his actions yield Hashem Shemayim. Doesn't say his feelings, but he's saying his actions should be for the sake of heaven. Know God in all your ways. All of his aspects of his life should be connected with knowing him. Another pasuk, know God, your Lord, similar to, not the same, but similar to the others, but they were merkava in every aspect of their lives. Bottom line, that the others were the merkava. Now comes the shayla. To understand, what is the praise? That the others, that they are the merkava, they are a chariot of Hashem. It would appear. Notwithstanding the great virtue of a vehicle has no will of its own, and it's the expression of the will of the rider or the driver. Moreover, why does a person get into a vehicle if he can go there himself? It's just an expression of him, so do it yourself. The point is, get there yourself. No. If you couldn't get there without the train, the car, and so on. So the merkava brings a person to a place he couldn't get to on his own. So it's a meditative thing which contributes to him. Notwithstanding that is a dain merkava bilvad. It's not you. It's a vehicle. It's something else. It's not an extension of the rider. In other words, it's bittul ayesh, not bittul b'mitzias, which will lead to his question: the others are holding much higher than bittul ayesh. So, but he elaborates on the shayla very beautifully. That's why the merkava is shaykh to malachim. Who bears aloft the merkava, the malachim? And the malachim bore the kisei, the throne, which is the merkava. Actually, they are the merkava. The throne sits sits atop the chariot. So who is the chariot? The malachim are the merkava. And the malachim, him merkava shalamayda, the malachim, they are the chariot. Va'ad, so much so, shepulos malvidosim, hamidas hashira, what's their avodah? And what are the effect of their avodah, which are the songs that they sing every day? He can make pulos hamerkava ba'areichev. It is like the chariot, the vehicle that brings the rider to a place that he couldn't get to. So it's true that the shira, the song of the malachim, is pale and aliyah in the Adam Sha'al HaKisei. There's the Adam on the Kisei, he was on the Merkava. That is the malachim. So malachim, that's the Merkava, they're the wheels. Describe it literally as wheels. And then you have the throne, and on the throne is the demos of the Adam Elyon. So the pale and meditative thing, the malachim through the avodah. The Adam Elyon is elevated, like the vehicle brings the rider to a place that ordinarily he could not arrive at. So notwithstanding all of that, there's still something other than the rider. They're not totally nullified and unified. It's not the rider himself. And the reason why they're not, he describes, it now defines their level. The malachim, which are the level of the merkava. There's different levels in the being the chariot. We're talking the highest level. In Olam Habriya, that's their station. That's where it is. That's where the merkava is. They're all after the birur. He means here after post Atzilus, Olam Atikun. Before Atzilus is the Shviras HaKelim, and then there comes what? Olam Atzilus, Olam Atikun, the integration, the harmonious integration of Oiris and Kelim, and Bria is post Atzilus. That means by Achli Abirur. So what is the birur? Not the ultimate birur. The birur is that there's no mixture of evil there. So it's a refined olam. Refined as it is, of mikol mokim hamalachu. Turn the page. We're talking olam abriya. We're still talking olam abriya. So we're invoking the sense of separation, creation, otherness. As he explains in Tanya, that the malach, only when the malach acts, is sent as an agent from above. This is this week's parsha here now with Avram. In all the Mesholim that Rashi, the examples Rashi brings, nikra b'shem Hashem, then he's called on God's name. When he's acting as a shliach, then he's bottle, betachlis. But the malach himself, yesh l'shem acher, he has his own name. Kodesh Hashem, and he declares, holy, holy is Hashem. What's he saying? Holy means removed. Claim Hashem. Hashem moved him, and he's declaring the Eibush is beyond him. He's declaring his own degree of separation. So the Rebbe is saying that a Merkava, a Malach, is a wonderful, glorious level, but the others are far beyond. A Malach is still, at the end of the day, some kind of independent entity. And the air conditioner, so it gets cold and hot, it blows. It'll soon blow warm in a minute. You didn't even notice, but so much so is a malach independent. A malach can be judged and found guilty. They threw Matat out of Gan Eden, and they struck him with 60 strikes of fire. The story that there is the story of Acher, Elisha ben Navur, that the four entered into paradise. So what was it that made Elisha, after this experience, became an apikoides? So the Gemara says, we encountered this this year, this story. That so he came there and he saw that Matat is sitting. He was appointed to gather all the praises of Eden, and as it were, tied him to Hashem's throne. Sitting. How could he sit in the presence before Hashem? And you take the things kipshutai, which is not what it means. But anyway, he deduced that there are two rishuyas. There are two domains. Sitting means the lack of independence. So that's when he went. From that, he became Gabakodes. His kind of misinterpretation of what he saw the mile of Matat Yoshev and gathering the praises of Yidden. But the Gemara says, as a result of that, they threw Matat out of Gan Eden. That he did something that could be so misinterpreted. So what do we see from here? That there's such a degree of independence that a malach has that he can do something wrong and guilty and be banished. Like as we say, where do we say this? On the Sana Toikev. So the angels gripped with trembling, and they grips them, trembling and terror. What are they terrified for? If they're terrified, obviously there's some degree of guilt, of imperfection in the face of God that they feel that they're trembling. So what's the whole bitter? The bitter is they're not outright ra. There's no mixture of ra in the malach. He's a nice boy. Nice, but not purely godly, not absorbed in the likus. They're not the complete bitter. They are not the result of a complete bitter. They should be absorbed within the likus and be mamish an extension of Elikus. Your car, the chariot is not an extension of you. If it's operating properly, it's bottled to you. Hopefully you turn the wheel this way, it goes that way. But it's still something else. That's why they can be called a merkava, a vehicle. And as we said before, now he now elaborates on what you said before. So how is it that the merkava lifts the Adam Elyon? The chariot brings the rider to a place he couldn't get. So it means somehow, if you can contribute, you're higher. The shayrish is very high taka. The shayrish of the malachim is in toihu, is shekadam alatik, which precedes tikkun. So they're very
Rabbi,
high. Yeah.
Ask you a question. Are we saying? You didn't realize I was on.
No, I thought it was a malachos calling from heaven, a baskal. Yeah.
Are we saying that Yirat Hashem is a chisaron? That it's a sign of separation?
At the lower level of Yira, yeah. There's two levels of Yira. So the lower level of Yira is taka, and I'm afraid because of my imperfection. Then there's a higher level of Yira, which is the ultimate level, higher than Ava, which is complete awe and bittul. It's not Yira Sa'in, there's not this kind of fear.
No, but we're saying here from the Malachim that it's to have this fear or any fear or whatever, it seems like it's a sign of imperfection, like we just mentioned.
Yeah, well, it's a sign of Mitzias. It's a Mitzias. You're afraid, so it means you're caught up in your emotion. You're not experiencing the truth of the Melech. If you're mamash for bottom Mitzias, you don't have any feelings. It's the Melech, and that's the end of it. And you just gaze in complete bittul.
So you can have Yira and be battle to the Melech?
It's a higher kind of Yira. No, not this kind of Yira. It's a different level of Yira with Veloshin Ri'iyah, just gazing upon the awesomeness of the king and not even experiencing your own awe of him. It's not, it's not, oh, wow, I'm in awe. It's beyond I'm in awe. It's the truth of the Melech. And that's why it's higher than Ava. Because Ava, even the highest level, is still very much bound up, I love. You can't have, a completely transcendent love. By definition, you're feeling emotion. But Yira, the higher level of Yira, which is really just awe, he does not even aware that he's in awe. He's not even aware that the lower level Yira, he's trembling, and he's very much he's very aware of his feelings. That's the whole experience. The whole level of love, for sure, I love what you do for me. The higher level of love is I love you, but still self. Yesh mi she'oyev. The highest level is here. That's hinted to in the pasuk. Yitzchak ben Avram. It says Yitzchak. Yitzchak is the lower Yira, then Avram is the lower Ava. Avram is the higher Ava, and the final is Yitzchak Yira Ilah. That's Taka Bittul B'Mitzias. But that's not the Malachim. The Malachim are trembling, shivering in their boots, in their holy boots. If you remind me, I can't say this now. It's not to be recorded, not if I bring it. But if you remind me of a sharp word that was said by a Fabrengen, I think it was said by Shmuel Levitten. Shmuel Levitten, the famous Mashpi in 770. He lived in 770. And he was a very sharp fellow. And he once spoke about the Malachim and said a sharp Chassidische word, which was said by the Fabrengen. I heard this from Rabbi Yosef Minkovich, who heard it from him. So if you remind me, if you remember, Shabbos will say it. I'm smiling because you see how funny it is. Chassidim have a good sense of humor, they have to. Because the first sense of humor is you have to laugh at yourself. To take yourself seriously is the first flaw. Take your mission seriously, your responsibility seriously, but not yourself, not your achievements. For that matter, not your failures. No, get up and go. Stop wallowing there. It's a job to be done. There's no time for taking even the sin seriously, and certainly not the mitzvahs. So you take the avodah seriously, but not yourself seriously. So humor is an integral part of being a chassid. Yeah, so let's continue. So because the Shoyrish of the Malachim, that's Olam HaToyo. Like Nefesh HaBahamis. Nefesh HaBahamis Lamata, Shoyrish of Olam HaToyo, which is why through engaging Nefesh HaBahamis, the Neshama gets an Aliyah. That's because of the source. Shalachin biyachol to make use of the Malachim. The Halis says in Yodim the Tikkun, Malachim can elevate even Tikkun. The Adam Sha'ala Kisei is really already Olam HaTzilus, Olam HaTikkun. Shazel Kol saying in the Shema, that's the Shema Zo, which is generally Atzilus. Anyway, point is because the Shoyrish of the Malachim is very high, therefore, when engaged and channeled properly, this can cause an aliyah even in the rarefied world of Atzilus. The Malachim are beasts, they're animals, and godly beasts, godly animals that come from a very high chaotic source, which is Toyo. So when they're channeled and they sing and they're harnessed, so they cause an aliyah. Aval, still it's all true, but it's kind of despite them. They still, the fact is they're the Merkava, they themselves have this independence, relatively speaking, as we just described. Matat is cast out of Gan Eden, and he's the highest Malach, mind you. So that's the Merkava, all leading to the question. So what the Medrash says of us, hey, Merkava, what's the big praise? So we'll continue tomorrow talking about the Ovis. They're holding by Bitl B'Betziyas, the Elam Atzilus. So why are we praising them as being the Merkava?